Hello and welcome to the alternative Christmas message on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes. Today is a very special day for many people across the UK and around the world, and as such I want to share the good news with you. The Tories are set to get absolutely battered in the next election. Now, I know there are a few amongst you who are not entirely sold on the idea of a Labour government led by Keir Starmer, and you know what? I get it. If I had my way, Labour would be pledging that we'll be back in the EU the day after the election. They'll promise to bring in PR. We'll have universal basic income before the year was out, universal basic energy, universal basic services. The privatisation of the NHS will be reversed, and there will be major investments in social and healthcare services with a particular emphasis on improving mental health as well as physical health in general. All drugs will be legalised, heavily regulated, of course, and the billions that we waste every year on the failed war on drugs will be spent on education and addiction services instead. The press would be regulated properly. Leveson too would see the likes of Piers Morgan brought to justice, and the tax-dodging billionaire press barons who drip poison into the minds of millions every day would be forced to either buck up or fuck off. The police service will be reformed, root and stem, the Met broken up. Everyone involved in the PPE VIP lane would go to jail. A proper investigation will be carried out into Russian interference in the EU referendum. Homelessness will be eradicated by simply giving homeless people homes to live in. Child poverty would be eradicated in this country. Food and fuel poverty would be a thing of the past. The trains would be nationalised along with water, energy and broadband. All new builds would have solar panels as standard, as would all supermarket car parks. If farmers want to have solar panels on their land, that's up to them, not up to the politicians. The effective moratorium on wind farms will be ended, and a wind turbine will be set up in the back garden of every former Tory MP in the land. ULEZ will be expanded to cover every Chelsea tractor in Christendom. All private schools would be burnt to the ground. But since it's Christmas, I'd let the kids out first. No more school segregation based on income or religion. Let kids be kids, for heaven's sake, and let's put social mobility back on the agenda. Refugees will be allowed to apply for asylum from wherever they are in the world, smashing the current income model for people smugglers across the channel. I'll have noise limits on products like vacuum cleaners, hand dryers, motorcycles, snoring. I'll oversee a massive investment in the railways, getting these knackered old regional trains and freight trains off the East Coast and West Coast main lines. Trains would run through the night and be as cheap as chips. Companies that operate in the UK would have to pay their fair share of tax. Individuals who reside in the UK would also have to pay their fair share of tax. Also, there'll be a wealth tax and a much more robust inheritance tax. Nobody will be allowed to have a personal net worth of over £50 million. That's enough for several lifetimes. Thank you very much. I would institute a use it or lose it clause for people who own property to stop the rot. All films at the cinema would have subtitles as standard. I could go on. So I will. MPs to no longer have second jobs except in a volunteer capacity for the public good. The House of Lords will be abolished and replaced with an elected second chamber. The whole of Parliament would move to a more sensible location and a more sensible building conducive to formulating policy rather than just barking at each other. The UK would become a federal state with England unable to simply dictate policy to Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland without their consent. The Parthenon marbles would be returned, as would be the Benin bronzes and the Rosetta Stone. Statues of ne'er-do-wells would be torn down by the descendants of the people that they tortured and killed. The remains of said statues will be placed in museums and contextualised correctly. They would be replaced by statues of actual great people who achieved, inspired and saved lives rather than taking them. There will be a nationwide moratorium on soulless buildings and city centres that look like they were built by a particularly depressed robot with no understanding of beauty, context, or human emotions such as love. There'll be major investments in cycle lanes and fast efficient green public transport that would see the majority of cars banished from places that humans like to congregate. Tuition fees would be gotten rid of and replaced with a simple graduate tax which only kicks in once you're earning over a set amount. The Tory policies of austerity and cutting public services to the bone would be consigned to the dustbin of history. The cruel and punitive policy of not allowing people earning less than £38,700 a year to marry someone from another country would be scrapped. In fact, pretty much every evil thing that the Tories have done over the last 13 years would be ground to dust and scattered to the four winds. There's about 1,000 other things that I would like to see happen in this country to improve things for everyone. But that's just a wish list. For most voters in the UK, stuff like voting reform, returning to the EU and bringing in UBI are not priorities. If Labour put them in their manifesto, there's a chance that they'll lose the next election. Again, for the 5th time in a row. And that's a chance we can't afford to take. Or maybe you can. Maybe you're doing really well for yourself. Maybe you're a millionaire or a trust fund kid. Maybe you own your own house and enjoy a final salary pension earning 50 grand a year, even though you've not worked since 1997. But that's not the vast majority of us. The vast majority have seen the price of everything rise. Mortgages and rent go through the roof. We talk about the cost of living. We also need to think about the quality of living. The Tories think you can live off 30p a day. That's not living. That's barely surviving. Paradoxically, they also think £250,000 is chicken feed. They simply don't live in the real world. Never have, never will. The reality is there are hundreds of thousands of people in this country who simply will not survive another 5 years of Tory mismanagement, money grubbing and performative cruelty. Cruelty that targets minorities, those suffering from mental health problems, the homeless, the elderly, the poor, the sick and the disabled. In 2024, Keir Starmer and Labour have one job and one job alone, and that's to get the Tories out. Once that is done, then our criticism of the party will actually begin to mean something. At the moment, they're not in power. It's like giving a 1-star review to a film that was never made. Like, what's the point? Once Labour are in power, that's when they and we have a chance to change this country for the better. Once Labour are in power, we will hold them to account. Channels like this one, also a different bias, Maximilian Robespierre, Supertansky, 8 Thompson, Allshort, Bowler Hatman, our media friends, Femi Olawale, Marina Perkis, Carol Vorderman, Gemma Forte, James O'Brien and others will continue to fight the good fight. We have no plans to sit back after the next election and say, ha ha, job done. And it won't just be us lot holding Labour to account. It will also be all of the newspapers, most of whom hate Labour's guts. It'll be the BBC, Channel 4, Sky News. It'll be the party members, the trade unions, the workers, and ultimately the people who voted for them. The conversation will continue. The majority of Labour members want us back in the EU. The majority of Labour members want proportional representation. The majority also want to see the railways back in public hands. But none of that can happen until the Tories are out of office. And I say it's not enough that the Tories are beaten in the next election. The Tory party must be destroyed as a warning to future parties not to go down the road of sheer incompetence and downright fascism. I'd like to see the Lib Dems as the official opposition, dragging the Overton window back towards the centre left where it belongs. Labour might only give you 50% of what you want, but that's 50% more than the Tories ever will. In order to win, Labour know they can't scare the people who voted Tory in the last election into voting against them. We need them to either vote for anyone but the Tories or simply not bother voting at all. And that means shifting towards the centre ground and putting themselves forward as competent and delectable. For the people who have a problem with this shift, it's not Labour per se that's the issue here, it's the electorate. I'm sorry to have to break this to you, but we live in a country that's chock full of right-wingers. You know how difficult it is to change the mind of someone you know and love. You want to change the entire worldview of 13 million people by May? Good luck with that. I know it's frustrating. If only people could see things your way, they might change their minds about stuff. I'm sorry. We have to work with the tools we've got. We have to play the game in order to change the game. But back to the good news. The Tories look like they're toast. In a recent poll, just 1% of young people say they're planning to vote for the Conservatives in the next election. So there's something to look forward to. Scores of Tory MPs crying in leisure centres at 3 a.m. some Friday morning in 2024. So all in all, I'd like to wish a fantastic Christmas to you, your friends and loved ones. I know things look bleak at the moment, but the darkest hour is just before the dawn. And if any members of the Tory party have made it this far, I'd just like to say, Merry Christmas, you arseholes. Thank God it's your last.